I used to believe betrayal only happened in movies or in those dramatic stories people whispered about in barber shops and beer parlors. I never imagined it would become my reality. If someone had told me years ago that the two people I trusted most in this world would destroy my peace in the worst possible way, I would have laughed and called them crazy. But life has a strange way of humbling people. My name is Daniel. I was 34 years old when my marriage started falling apart right in front of my eyes, even though I was too blind to see it. I met my wife, Vanessa, during my final year in university. She was the kind of woman who could light up an entire room without even trying. She had a calm smile, soft eyes, and a laugh that made everyone around her feel comfortable. Back then, I was just another broke student trying to survive exams and late-night hustles. I never thought someone like her would notice me. But she did. We started as friends. She would borrow my notes, and I would walk her back to her hostel after classes. Those little conversations slowly became longer talks about life, dreams, family, and everything in between. Eventually, we became inseparable. When I graduated and got my first decent job, I proposed to her with the little money I had saved. The ring was small and nowhere near expensive, but she cried when she saw it. "I would marry you even if you gave me a rubber ring," she told me. Back then, I believed every word. 3 years later, we got married in a modest ceremony attended by close friends and family. My best friend, Marcus, stood beside me as my best man. Marcus and I had been friends since secondary school. We survived everything together. We played football on dusty streets, shared meals when we had nothing, and defended each other in countless fights. If I had $100, Marcus had 50 of it. That was the kind of friendship we had. He was the loud and confident type while I was more reserved. Women naturally gravitated toward him because he knew exactly what to say and how to say it. But despite his reputation with women, I trusted him completely. That trust would later become my biggest mistake. After marriage, life moved quickly. I worked hard to provide for my family while Vanessa focused on building her online fashion business. At first, things were beautiful. We traveled when we could afford it, spent weekends watching movies, and laughed about the future we wanted to build together. Then reality slowly entered the picture. Bills increased. Responsibilities multiplied. Pressure became constant. I started working longer hours because I wanted us to have a better life. Sometimes I left home before sunrise and returned long after dinner. Vanessa complained about my absence. "You're always working," she would say. "I'm doing this for us," I always replied. At the time, I thought sacrifice was enough to keep a marriage strong. I was wrong. One Friday evening, Marcus visited our house unexpectedly. He walked in carrying drinks and snacks like he always did. "My people," he shouted. Vanessa laughed and hugged him warmly. I remember watching them that evening while we sat in the living room talking about old memories. They seemed comfortable around each other. Too comfortable. But I ignored the thought immediately. Why would I suspect my own wife and my best friend? That would be ridiculous. Marcus became a regular visitor after that. Sometimes he came over when I was around. Sometimes he stopped by when I was still at work. Vanessa always said he came to help her with business ideas because Marcus worked in digital marketing. And honestly, it made sense. Her business was improving rapidly. She started getting more customers online, and her social media pages suddenly looked more professional. I was proud of her. I even thanked Marcus for helping. "Your family," he said. Family. That word still disgusts me till today. Months passed. The first sign that something was wrong came from a very small moment. One night, Vanessa was taking a shower while her phone buzzed repeatedly on the bed. I normally never touched her phone because we respected each other's privacy. But the notifications kept appearing. At first, I ignored them. Then I noticed the sender's name. M. Just the letter M. The messages kept coming. "Miss you already. Wish tonight didn't end so fast." Then another one. "Can't stop thinking about your smile." My stomach tightened instantly. I stared at the messages in disbelief. My mind desperately searched for explanations. Maybe it was a female friend. Maybe it was business-related. Maybe I was overthinking. But deep down, something felt terribly wrong. The bathroom door opened. Vanessa stepped out wrapped in a towel and froze the moment she saw me holding her phone. For a split second, panic flashed across her face. Then she forced a smile. "Why are you checking my phone?" "I wasn't checking it," I replied quietly. "Your messages kept popping up." She grabbed the phone quickly. "That's just Maya," she said casually. Why is her name saved as M? I shortened it. I nodded slowly even though I didn't fully believe her. But I wanted to believe her. That's the dangerous thing about love. Sometimes you ignore obvious warning signs because accepting the truth feels too painful. Over the next few weeks, little things continued happening. Vanessa became more protective of her phone. She started smiling at messages and turning her screen away from me. She spent longer hours online. Sometimes she suddenly became distant for no reason. When I asked if everything was okay, she blamed stress. Meanwhile, Marcus became strangely unavailable whenever I called him. The same man who used to answer immediately now took hours to respond. Again, I ignored it. One evening after work, I came home earlier than usual because my office closed for maintenance. As I approached the house, I noticed Marcus's car parked outside. I smiled at first. Then I remembered Vanessa had told me she would be visiting her cousin that day. Confused, I walked toward the front door. It was locked from inside. I knocked. No response. I knocked again. This time I heard movement inside. Fast movement. Whispering. Then silence. My heartbeat started rising. A full minute later, Vanessa finally opened the door. Her hair looked messy. Her face looked nervous. "Oh, you're back early," she said. I stared at her without speaking. Then Marcus appeared behind her. "Bro," he said loudly. "You scared us." The atmosphere instantly felt unnatural. Too tense. Too rehearsed. "What are you doing here?" I asked. Marcus scratched his head awkwardly. We were discussing some campaign ideas for her business. I looked around the house. Something felt off. I couldn't explain it, but my instincts were screaming. Still, I forced myself to stay calm. That night, I barely slept. Every little detail replayed repeatedly in my mind. The locked door. The whispering. Vanessa's expression. Marcus's nervous energy. Yet I kept fighting the suspicion. Because once you accept the possibility that your partner is cheating, your entire world changes. And I wasn't ready for that. The following weekend, Marcus invited me out for drinks. We sat in a crowded lounge watching football while music blasted in the background. He acted normal. Too normal. At some point, he excused himself to answer a call. He left his phone on the table. Seconds later, a message popped up. My blood froze. It was from Vanessa. Did he suspect anything? I felt my entire body go cold. Marcus returned moments later and immediately noticed my expression. Our eyes locked. For the first time in our friendship, silence felt dangerous. What happened? He asked. I slowly pushed the phone toward him. His face changed instantly. The color drained from his skin. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then he grabbed the phone quickly. Bro, it's not what you think. I laughed bitterly. Really? Then explain it. He opened his mouth but no words came out. That silence told me everything. I stood up immediately. Daniel, calm down, he said. Don't touch me. People around us started staring. I didn't care. Years of friendship suddenly felt fake. Every memory became contaminated. Every moment of trust felt stupid. How long? I asked quietly. Marcus looked away. How long? I repeated louder. A few months, he admitted. The words hit harder than a physical punch. A few months. While I worked overtime to provide for my home, my best friend was sleeping with my wife. I wanted to attack him. I wanted to destroy everything around me. But strangely, I felt numb. Completely numb. I left the lounge without another word. My hands shook violently while driving home. Every thought in my head felt chaotic. By the time I arrived, Vanessa was sitting in the living room pretending everything was normal. The moment she saw my face, she knew. What happened? She asked carefully. I stared at her for several seconds. Then I said the words that shattered our marriage forever. I know about you and Marcus. Her face immediately collapsed. Tears filled her eyes instantly. Daniel, please. How long? She covered her mouth while crying. How long? I shouted. 5 months, she whispered. 5 months. 5 entire months. I laughed painfully. The kind of laugh that comes from heartbreak so deep it almost feels unreal. Inside this house, I asked, She stayed silent. That silence was another answer. I felt something break inside me permanently. Why? She cried harder. I felt lonely. Lonely. That word ignited anger inside me. So instead of talking to me, you slept with my best friend? It just happened. No, I snapped. It doesn't just happen. You both made choices. She tried touching my arm, but I moved away immediately. At that moment, even looking at her hurt. Everything about her suddenly felt unfamiliar. The woman I once trusted with my life now looked like a stranger. That night became the longest night of my life. We argued for hours. She apologized repeatedly. She blamed emotional distance. She blamed loneliness. She blamed confusion. But none of it mattered. Because betrayal destroys something deeper than love. It destroys safety. And once safety disappears, everything changes. Around 3 in the morning, I packed a small bag and left the house. Vanessa cried and begged me not to go. I ignored her. The divorce papers had not yet been finalized, but emotionally, the marriage was already over. Every morning, I woke up hoping that the previous months had been a nightmare. Every morning, reality returned before I even got out of bed. The apartment felt empty. The silence felt heavier than any argument I had ever experienced. For years, I had complained about noise in the house. The television. Vanessa talking on the phone. Her music playing while she worked. Now I would have given anything to hear those sounds again. Not because I wanted her back. But because silence constantly reminded me of what I had lost. Work became my escape. I arrived early. I left late. I volunteered for projects nobody wanted. Anything that kept my mind occupied was welcome. Unfortunately, heartbreak follows you everywhere. One afternoon, while reviewing reports in my office, my phone vibrated. The message came from an unknown number. At first, I ignored it. Then another message appeared. Please don't block this number. I need to talk to you. I immediately knew who it was. Vanessa. I stared at the screen for nearly a minute. Part of me wanted to delete the message. Another part wanted answers. Eventually, I typed a response. What do you want? Her reply came instantly. 5 minutes. I sighed heavily. You already took enough from me. Several minutes passed. Then another message appeared. I know. That's why I need to apologize properly. I locked the phone and returned to work. No apology could change anything. No explanation could undo 5 months of lies. Still, her words stayed in my head throughout the day. That evening, I met my sister for dinner. She immediately noticed something was bothering me. You look distracted. I told her about the message. She rolled her eyes. What more does she want? I don't know. Daniel, be careful. I'm not getting back together with her. That's not what worries me. I looked at her. What worries me is that pain makes people vulnerable. She wasn't wrong. Despite everything Vanessa had done, there were moments when I missed the woman I thought she was. The problem was that woman no longer existed. Or maybe she never existed at all. A week later, I received another surprise. A mutual friend called me unexpectedly. Have you heard about Marcus? My stomach tightened immediately. No. Things are bad. I remained silent. Really bad. Apparently, after the affair became public within our social circle, several people distanced themselves from him. Friends stopped inviting him to gatherings. Business opportunities disappeared. People who once trusted him suddenly questioned everything about his character. The reputation he spent years building collapsed almost overnight. I should have felt happy. Instead, I felt strangely empty. Because none of his suffering repaired my broken marriage. None of it restored my trust. None of it gave me back the life I lost. Revenge sounds satisfying in theory. Reality is different. One evening, while leaving a grocery store, I unexpectedly saw Marcus standing beside his car. For a second, neither of us moved. The last time we spoke was at the lounge where I discovered the truth. He looked different now. His confidence was gone. The man standing in front of me looked exhausted. Older. Defeated. He hesitated before speaking. Daniel. I didn't respond. I know you don't want to see me. I kept staring. But I need to say something. I considered walking away. Instead, I listened. Marcus swallowed hard. I ruined everything. The statement sounded painfully genuine. I remained silent. I lost my best friend. Still silence. I lost the respect of people I cared about. His voice cracked slightly. And honestly, I deserve it. For the first time since everything happened, I saw real remorse. Not excuses. Not justifications. Remorse. Unfortunately, remorse arrives too late sometimes. You made your choices, I finally said. He nodded. I know. You knew exactly what you were doing. Another nod. I know. The conversation ended there. Neither of us had anything else to say. Some bridges burn so completely that rebuilding them becomes impossible. As I drove home that night, I realized something important. The affair had destroyed 3 lives. Mine. Vanessa's. And Marcus's. The difference was that I never chose it. They did. A month later, Vanessa called again. This time, I answered. Not because I wanted reconciliation. Because I wanted closure. We met at a quiet cafe on the edge of town. The moment she walked in, I barely recognized her. She looked tired. The confidence she once carried had disappeared. Dark circles rested beneath her eyes. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then she quietly said something unexpected. Marcus cheated on me. I stared at her. What? She laughed bitterly. The kind of laugh people make when life becomes cruelly ironic. He was seeing someone else. I leaned back in my chair. The irony was unbelievable. The man who helped destroy our marriage had betrayed her too. When did you find out? 2 months ago. I nodded slowly. For years, I would have felt sympathy. Now, I simply felt tired. I guess this is karma, she said quietly. I looked at her. No. She seemed confused. No. Karma didn't make you cheat. Her eyes filled with tears. Karma didn't make Marcus cheat. More tears appeared. You both made choices. She lowered her head. I wasn't trying to be cruel. I was simply tired of people blaming fate for decisions they made themselves. The conversation continued for nearly an hour. For the first time, Vanessa accepted complete responsibility. No excuses. No blaming loneliness. No blaming work schedules. Nothing. Just accountability. And strangely enough, hearing that helped me heal. Because honesty finally replaced the lies. Before leaving, she looked directly into my eyes. If I could go back, I'd change everything. I believed her. The tragedy was that it no longer mattered. Life only moves forward. Not backward. Months passed. Little by little, my life improved. The pain became manageable. The anger became quieter. The memories hurt less. Then something unexpected happened. I met Naomi. At first, she was simply someone I enjoyed talking to. Nothing more. After what happened with Vanessa, I wasn't interested in relationships. Trust felt dangerous. Love felt risky. Commitment felt terrifying. Naomi never pressured me. She simply showed up consistently. And consistency is powerful. Especially after betrayal. Every promise she made, she kept. Every plan she suggested, she followed through. Every conversation felt honest. Slowly, the walls around my heart began to crack. One evening, we sat together watching the sunset. Without warning, she asked a question. Do you still love your ex-wife? The question caught me off guard. I thought carefully before answering. No. Naomi nodded. But? I smiled sadly. But I still grieve what happened. She squeezed my hand. That's different. And she was right. Missing a relationship and grieving a betrayal are not the same thing. As the months continued, my connection with Naomi deepened. For the first time in a long time, I felt peace. Real peace. No secrets. No games. No hidden messages. Just honesty. Meanwhile, life continued teaching lessons to everyone involved. Vanessa struggled with regret. Marcus struggled with consequences. And I struggled with trust. The difference was that I was finally moving forward. One afternoon, nearly 2 years after the affair began, I received a message from Marcus. I almost deleted it. Instead, I opened it. The message was short. I am leaving the city tomorrow. Before I go, I just wanted to say that I am sorry. Not because my life fell apart. Not because people abandoned me. But because you were genuinely my brother, and I betrayed you. I understand if you never forgive me. I read the message several times. Then I put my phone away. I didn't reply. Not out of hatred. Not out of revenge. There simply wasn't anything left to say. Sometimes silence becomes the final chapter of a friendship. That night, while sitting on my balcony, I reflected on everything that had happened. The marriage. The affair. The lies. The heartbreak. The recovery. The growth. For a long time, I believed my story was about betrayal. I eventually realized it was actually about survival. Because betrayal was only one chapter. It wasn't the entire book. And for the first time since my world collapsed, I genuinely believed something better was waiting ahead. The pain had not disappeared completely. Perhaps it never would. But it no longer controlled me. And that was enough. 2 years had passed since the day I discovered the affair. 2 years since my wife betrayed me with the man I once called my brother. 2 years since my world collapsed. Looking back, it felt like a completely different lifetime. The pain that once consumed every waking moment had faded into something quieter. The scars remained, but they no longer controlled my thoughts. For a long time, I believed healing meant forgetting. I eventually learned that healing is not forgetting. Healing is remembering without falling apart. That lesson took years to understand. My relationship with Naomi continued growing stronger. Unlike my marriage with Vanessa, this relationship was built slowly. There were no rushed promises. No unrealistic expectations. No pretending to be perfect. Just honesty. And after everything I had experienced, honesty felt more valuable than romance. One evening, Naomi and I sat together at a small restaurant overlooking the waterfront. The sun was beginning to set. The sky glowed with shades of orange and gold. For several minutes, we simply enjoyed the view. Then she asked a question. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you never found out? I thought about it carefully. Sometimes. And I stared at the water. I think it would have been worse. She looked surprised. Worse? I nodded. Because I would have continued living a lie. That was the truth. The discovery shattered my life, but it also exposed reality. No matter how painful the truth is, it remains better than a beautiful lie. Naomi smiled softly. I agree. As we sat there, I realized something important. For the first time in years, I wasn't thinking about Vanessa. I wasn't thinking about Marcus. I wasn't thinking about betrayal. I was simply enjoying the moment. And that felt like freedom. A few months later, something unexpected happened. I received an email from Vanessa. At first, I considered deleting it without reading. Curiosity got the better of me. The message was long. She wrote about everything that had happened since our divorce. The mistakes she had made. The consequences she had faced. The lessons she had learned. She admitted that losing our marriage forced her to confront parts of herself she had spent years avoiding. She described the guilt she carried. The regret. The shame. The loneliness. By the end of the message, she thanked me. Not for forgiving her. But for loving her sincerely when we were together. I read the email twice. Then I closed it. Years earlier, those words would have destroyed me emotionally. Now they simply felt sad. Not because I hated her. Because I understood how much had been lost. Later that evening, Naomi asked what I was thinking about. I told her about the email. She listened quietly. Then she asked, "Are you going to reply?" I thought for a moment. No. Why? Because some conversations belong in the past. She nodded. And that was the end of it. There was nothing left to fix. Nothing left to explain. Nothing left to revisit. The story had already ended. The next chapter belonged to someone else. Several weeks later, I received news about Marcus. A mutual friend informed me that he had moved to another state and started over completely. Apparently, he was trying to rebuild his life. The information stirred unexpected emotions. Not anger. Not satisfaction. Just reflection. For years, Marcus and I shared countless memories. School. Football matches. Road trips. Celebrations. Failures. Victories. At one point, I trusted him more than almost anyone. Then one decision destroyed everything. It amazed me how quickly trust could disappear. Building trust takes years. Destroying it takes minutes. One Sunday afternoon, while cleaning my apartment, I found an old box hidden in the back of a closet. Inside were photographs from my wedding. For several minutes, I stared at them. There I was. Smiling. Happy. Completely unaware of what the future held. Vanessa stood beside me in her wedding dress. Marcus stood nearby as my best man. Looking at those photographs felt surreal. Like observing the lives of strangers. For a brief moment, sadness returned. Not because I wanted that life back. Because I mourned the innocence I lost. Before the betrayal, I believed loyalty was guaranteed among people who claimed to love you. Life taught me otherwise. Yet strangely enough, I didn't regret those years. Every experience, even the painful ones, shaped the person I became. Without those hardships, I might never have developed the strength I possess today. A year later, Naomi and I decided to take a vacation together. The trip was simple. Nothing extravagant. Just a chance to relax and enjoy life. One evening, while walking along a quiet beach, she suddenly stopped. I looked at her curiously. She smiled nervously. Then she reached into her bag. For a second, I thought she was looking for her phone. Instead, she pulled out a small box. My eyes widened immediately. She laughed. I know this is supposed to be your job. I couldn't stop smiling. What are you doing? Taking a risk. Then she opened the box. Inside was a simple ring. Nothing flashy. Nothing expensive. Just meaningful. Tears instantly filled my eyes. Not because of the ring. Because of everything it represented. Trust. Hope. Second chances. Healing. Daniel, she said softly. Yes. I don't need a perfect relationship. I listened carefully. I don't need a perfect man. My throat tightened. I just want an honest future. For several seconds, I couldn't speak. Then I finally smiled. That sounds perfect to me. She laughed through tears. And just like that, a new chapter began. A few months later, we got married in a small ceremony surrounded by family and close friends. Unlike my first wedding, this one felt different. Not because I loved more deeply. Because I understood love more clearly. Love is not just emotion. Love is commitment. Love is honesty. Love is respect. Love is choosing loyalty even when temptation exists. Those lessons were written into my heart permanently. During the reception, my father pulled me aside. He looked around the room before smiling. You seem happy. I am. He nodded. You've come a long way. I looked toward Naomi. She was laughing with family members. For a moment, emotion overwhelmed me. Because he was right. The journey had been long. Painful. Complicated. But worth it. That night, after everyone left, Naomi and I sat together in silence. Neither of us spoke for several minutes. Finally, she rested her head on my shoulder. What are you thinking about? I smiled. How strange life is. She laughed softly. That's a big topic. It is. I looked at the stars. If someone had told me years ago that the worst day of my life would eventually lead me here, I wouldn't have believed them. Naomi squeezed my hand. Sometimes endings create space for better beginnings. I nodded slowly. Because she was right. The betrayal nearly destroyed me. The divorce nearly broke me. The heartbreak nearly consumed me. But none of those things became the end of my story. They became part of my story. And there is a difference. Years later, when people asked about the experience, I rarely spoke about the pain. Instead, I spoke about the lessons. The importance of character. The importance of trust. The importance of choosing people carefully. Most importantly, I spoke about resilience. Because resilience is what saved me. Not revenge. Not bitterness. Not anger. Resilience. The ability to keep moving forward after life knocks you down. That is what truly matters. Today, when I think about Vanessa, I no longer feel hatred. When I think about Marcus, I no longer feel rage. I simply feel gratitude for the lessons. Some people enter your life to stay forever. Others enter your life to teach you something. Both have value. The difference is understanding which is which. And if there is one message I hope people take from my story, it is this. Never allow someone else's betrayal to convince you that genuine love doesn't exist. One person's dishonesty does not represent everyone. One painful experience does not define your future. One heartbreak does not mean your story is over. Sometimes life breaks your heart so it can rebuild your perspective. Sometimes losing the wrong people creates room for the right ones. And sometimes the most painful chapter becomes the reason your greatest chapter eventually begins. As I sat beside Naomi that evening, watching another sunset disappear beyond the horizon, I finally understood something that took years to learn. My wife and my best friend betrayed me. They broke my trust. They shattered my world. But they did not destroy me. Because in the end, I survived. I healed. I grew. And most importantly, I found happiness again. That is how my story ends. Not with revenge. Not with bitterness. Not with regret. But with peace.